Today I'll be talking about Arkane Studios, their latest release Redfall, and the controversy surrounding it. I think it's safe to say that in general, the reception of Redfall has been, mixed.
Every gamer worldwide is making fun of Redfall.
I've played some bad games, but none have ever came close to how truly awful Redfall is.
You people love to review bomb games like this. Redfall is amazing. How much were you paid to say that? We get to experience this puppy at nice 60 frames on PC. Common PCW. We get Redfall the way it was meant to be played.
Redfall is a bit of a mess. It's plagued by all sorts of technical issues, including some stellar AI, major performance problems, texture popping so bad that I felt like I was playing Rage, and not to mention the frequent disconnections, hard crashes, and occasional infinite loading screen.
I'm Harvey Smith. I'm a co-creative director at Arkane Studios. I was co-creative director of Dishonored 1, and I was creative director of Dishonored 2, and I'm probably best known for the Deus Ex and Dishonored games. I remember early on there was a moment we were working on District 2, which is a little more rural, and Jim McGill took Talos at scale and dropped it in the middle of the farm that's there. And the district just eats the whole space station. Of course, it's gigantic.
It was just the size of the actual farm area.
Yeah.
And that's just one mission.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
So let's take this farm for example. It may be a considerably vaster play space than the one found in Prey, but it pales in comparison when it comes to the depth and detail found within. I would wager that this single room in Prey easily provides a greater amount of environmental storytelling, player agency and emergent gameplay than the entire farm mission, or for that matter, the entirety of Redfall. And believe me, it really hurts to have to say that. I absolutely adore Arkane Studios. I've played every game they've ever directly developed or assisted with. Ever since I first played Dishonored when I was only young, but the Arkane that exists today is quite far removed from the company that existed even as recently as Prey's release in 2017, which was the first title developed exclusively by Arkane Leon's sister team, Arkane Austin, the very same development team that's now released Redfall, though Prey was developed under the watchful eye of the founder, resident Dreamboat and Breath of the Wild hater, Rafael Colantonio.
And so, to your point, did I like Zelda Breath of the Wild? Yes, in many ways. This game had everything. I'm gonna give you one example. You need to get dressed up as a woman, and I was like, okay, that's cool.
Who left Arkane approximately 1 month after the release of Prey in order to go and make good game Weird West. And the first game Arkane worked on after his departure? Wolfenstein Youngblood. Nobody liked that. Followed by Deathloop, which is a somewhat divisive title. While I know it has its fans, I'm not one of them. But it's by no means a terrible game, and despite what a lot of people are saying, I'd argue Redfall isn't either. It just has a few issues, most of which will no doubt be sorted out in a few months' time, after 5 patches, another apology video, and a massive impact on the reputation of the development team that many held in extremely high regard. Redfall is an open world looter shooter whose world was touted as being on a smaller scale than that of similar games such as Far Cry or Borderlands, where those games offset their bloated scale by allowing the player access to various forms of traversal. Redfall is instead based around on-foot traversal, with a greater emphasis on attention to detail and minutiae that's often lost with a larger world. In theory, this sounds amazing, especially from a studio such as Arkane, who's renowned for their highly dense and detailed environments, as well as some extremely complex level design. Unfortunately, as I expressed previously, the world is quite shallow, with little to find or do, besides an occasional weapon, and the closest thing to environmental storytelling, outside of the main mission areas, is Person Not Alive Now. The overworld is split into segments, or neighbourhoods, each of which contains one safe house that you can claim. These are hardly an equivalent to outposts found in Far Cry though. The most I ever saw guarding one of these safe houses was 2 basic vampires and a handful of cultists. To be honest, you don't even need to fight the enemies there, you just have to switch on the power and it's yours. Once claimed, they act as fast travel points, as well as providing access to a whole 2 side missions each. One basic go and clear this area mission, followed by a hunt for the area's underboss. I feel as though they chose this name specifically, because it would really be a stretch to call this a boss. So, the world isn't exactly all it was made out to be. What about the looting and or shooting of this looter shooter? The looting is your standard colour based rarity system for weapons, and you've got random junk in the world that's automatically exchanged for money upon picking it up. In the world there's these vampire nests that spawn, acting as the game's procedural dungeons and loot farms. They're pretty much identical every single time, requiring you to sneak or fight your way through to the end of an extended corridor, only to be rewarded with what seems to be consistently shit loot, or maybe I just got unlucky. I also found the gameplay to be somewhat lacking in general, even though there's a variety of abilities and weapons that are in theory fun. For instance the stake launcher, which has the potential to one-shot your basic vampire enemy without the need to sit through another fucking staking animation. You've also got the UV beam, which petrifies vampires and blinds human enemies, making them vulnerable for a short time. In addition to your 3 equipable weapons, you'll have access to a variety of powers and abilities depending on the character that you choose. I, for example, chose Jacob, because he talked the least. Jacob can cloak, turn on aim hacks, sleep tight, or do his best Mordecai impression. Layla is the 20-something college kid that incessantly quips. Her 3 powers include summon vampire boyfriend, a bounce pad, and a shield. Remy has a robot, a bomb, and an AoE heal, and finally there's Dev, who has 2 crowd control tools, one which turns vampires into stone, much like the UV beam, and one that shocks them, as well as having a teleport that you and your teammates can use to reach otherwise inaccessible areas or bypass the various intricate routes and entryways. Not that this matters much, since even though there are multiple ways into any building, it never makes much difference in the way that things play out. Speaking of which, let's take a look at the very first building you break your way into, the firehouse. This will become your first main HQ, and there's multiple different ways that you can get into this fairly small building. One on the ground, and an open skylight on the roof. The question is why? Why bother when there's literally only 2 cultists inside and a single vampire in the basement? There's no need for stealth, there's no need for planning, and it all feels a bit pointless to be honest. The world feels empty and lacks any real challenge, even on hard mode. It's clear that Arkane Austin had a good idea, but fumbled the execution. The lack of random events in the open world is a glaring issue. There are occasionally 2 factions fighting, but it's a rare occurrence, which results in the world feeling empty. Compare this with a game like Far Cry 5, where there was constant action and always something going on to keep the player engaged. Redfall had tremendous potential, but it ultimately fell short in various areas. It had the opportunity to be a densely packed open world co-op game, filled with mystery and intrigue, where the players could immerse themselves in a captivating setting and uncover its secrets. Unfortunately, what we got was a hollow and uninspired experience that failed to live up to its promises. Let's hope that Arkane Austin puts in the work to improve the game and deliver the experience that fans were hoping for.